You're stupid.
I will. You should enjoy your vacation, Will.
Dang it.
Okay. The plan for today is I'd like to finish up talking about the actual war. You're probably going to get a couple questions on wartime conferences, so please make sure that you pay attention during that part. Your vocab is due tomorrow, yes? Okay. Some of you need to start your vocab tonight so that you get your vocab done tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to be lots and lots and lots on the Holocaust, and then you get the weekend off to study, and then we'll do an FRQ and one short answer question on Monday. Okay. Everybody good with the schedule?
Yes.
Okay. Before we begin, can we, by the time we leave tomorrow, make an executive decision on this review session, whether it's going to happen or not?
It will happen.
Okay. So we're not going to do it this weekend, but I would like to put it on the calendar here for the morning of the 16th. Okay. Show of hands of how many people can at least make it. I'm not saying that you're coming, but the morning of the 16th.
What time are you? What time?
Sure.
The
Yeah.
weekend.
Yeah.
What time are you talking about?
I mean, honestly, I think that 8:30 a.m. is probably, if we go 8:30 to 10:30, I think that's 2 solid hours. That's plenty. Yeah, and last year I had plenty of people, come for the first hour and then they had to go and do something, and that's fine. Or if they had practice and got out of practice a little early and then, came for the second hour, that was fine too. So I told Six Bell, and I will tell you this too, I'm not going to buy you breakfast, okay? I thought about doing that. I'm not going to buy you breakfast, but I will give you extra credit if you come. So, but you guys can bring your own breakfast. Okay. So, anyway, that's the plan. As of now, we'll go tentative for 8:30. 8:30 to 10:30.
Can we all be here at 8 o'clock and we can all make breakfast?
We used to. I didn't
Make
say
breakfast
it.
and breakfast.
We will be
So much.
Oh, and you guys like
I can make breakfast.
I just bring my waffle iron and put it to the wall, right?
Then my mom makes a distract my little one.
Hey,
Really? God.
my dad makes
Waffles!
My dad makes
Yeah. That's just so weird.
Mine are
Pardon?
really good.
He was
Okay, one question at a time. They're going to be within.
I can make sushi.
Yes. You guys can't make it?
Yeah.
What do you have that weekend?
We are going to be in Columbus, all three of us.
Daniel
And Zach and Alex and MJ.
What time's our game?
We still have it.
That's fine.
Hey, Bill, it's Billy's birthday.
I haven't checked yet.
Okay.
Birthday cake.
Okay. Well, then let's get going and finish up the material here for World War II. Okay. Where did we leave off yesterday?
The U.S. joined Pearl.
Germany was so close to winning.
Yeah, Germany's so close to winning. The U.S. bombed Pearl Harbor. All right.
I knew you were a conspiracy
Germany.
The U.S. knew about the bombing of Pearl Harbor, and then the Japanese bombing. So
was a conspiracy. Is it like a fact or?
what's that? Well, I mean, it's a fact that the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor.
No.
But yeah, as far as whether the U.S. knew about it, I think that's strictly a conspiracy.
There will be a question on
Moon landing was fake.
right?
Hey,
What?
I heard about that one last
Is
night.
this conspiracy like true in this class? Like, is your teacher? Or is it just?
Well, I mean, I'm not going to make people believe everything that I believe. I mean, Hannah and I practice food. We only haven't tried the virtue yet. Okay. All right. Here's the deal. Do you guys know the official starting date of World War II?
Yes.
September 9th, 19.
Good. September 1st, 1939, and that is the German blitzkrieg into Poland. Okay? So, just like we talked about yesterday, Poland, okay, is now part of Germany. Remember that they have signed the non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union. They don't have to worry about Spain because that's fascist. This is all fascist. They've taken over France. All right, so all of this is basically controlled by the Nazis. The last part up here is Great Britain. And yesterday we did talk about the Battle of Britain, right?
Yeah.
And the Blitz, okay, and the Luftwaffe, right?
Yeah.
Did I tell you the student joke?
The
The
Luftwaffe.
Luftwaffles? Okay, good. All right. So, the U.S. is now involved in the war. By the end of 1941, December 7th, 1941, when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, the U.S. is involved. Now, the U.S. and the British combined forces. They turned themselves into the Allied forces, and now they're sitting in the war room thinking, we have to win this war. Now, if you imagine World War II, especially the war in Europe, as a game of capture the flag, where do you have to get? If you're the American and the British forces, where do you have to get to quote-unquote win the war?
Germany.
Be more specific.
Berlin.
You got to get to Berlin, right? I mean, this is the prize. You got to get into Germany and you got to get into Berlin. Now, don't forget that the Germans or the Italians, the fascists, have occupied most of the continent, if not all of it. So it's not like you can just come up, knock on the front door, and be like, "Hey, we're going to invade." Okay, Prancer, let me ask you this question because I think that you are a thief at heart. Okay, you're a bad seed. Okay. Let's say that this weekend you decide that you're going to rob a house. Okay? And in robbing this house, no smart alecky answers. Okay? Truly, if you decide to rob a house, are you going to come up at 2 a.m., knock on the front door, and be like, psst? Or are you going to try and go around the back door and see if the back door is open or if there's a window open? Yeah, you're going to do the second option. The Allies do the same thing. When they talk about the strategy of the war, first of all, quick side note, you don't have to know this, but the Americans, remember they're fighting the Japanese too, their immediate strategy after Pearl Harbor, even though the Japanese had just bombed them, their strategy was 3 words: defeat Hitler first. They thought that the Nazis posed a greater threat to world-time peace than the Japanese. So, defeat Hitler first. Now, the Americans and British are going to come over here, and to quote Branzer, you're not going to just knock in the front door. You're going to see if there's an open door, open window through the backside. The Allies do the same thing. What we call this is that the Allies come from Great Britain around here through North Africa, and they try and attack Germany through Italy. Okay? 2 things that you need to know about this. First of all, they called this the soft underbelly of Europe. Okay? Italy, yes. Kayla, you're going to kill a turtle. Okay? I'm going to give you a big knife, and you have to stab the turtle to death. Are you going to keep it right side up and stab it through the shell, or are you going to turn it over to that soft underbelly and stab it through there? Yeah, I don't understand why you got to kill a turtle, but that's how you would do it, right? It's the soft underbelly. It's the same thing. So the Americans and the British, they come through North Africa and they come up through Italy in what is nicknamed Operation Torch. Operation Torch. This is the original strategy of the Allies to defeat the Germans. Operation Torch. How do you remember Operation Torch?
It goes
A torch is hot. So is Africa. That's it. It ain't hard, right? They come through North Africa, and they come up here through Italy. Operation Torch.
Does it work?
Ultimately, was Operation Torch successful?
No.
Did we win the war this way? Did we invade Germany this way? Were we able to get to Berlin?
No.
Did the Nazis surrender?
No.
No. So Operation Torch, at the beginning, Molly, good question, were successful. We win some battles down here in North Africa. The British actually defeat Hitler's army down here at the Battle of El Alamein. I don't know if that showed up on your vocab or in your reading, but the Battle of El Alamein, they actually keep the Germans out of the Suez Canal, which was a big victory for them. So Operation Torch had some bright spots. They come up here through Italy. They win in Sicily. They win here at Anzio. and they're making their way up here through Italy, and guess who freaks out? Yeah, Hitler, right? I mean, Mussolini's trying to fight him off. We know that Mussolini's not a very good leader, and his Italian army isn't as skilled as the Nazis. So what the Germans do is they bring some troops down, and the Americans get stonewalled in Northern Europe, right at the base of the Alps. And we're stuck. We can't go anywhere. Because of the mountains, and because the German army is a lot more skilled, okay? Plus, we're a little, nicked up and wounded after fighting our way all the way up here through Italy, okay? So Operation Torch had some bright spots, ultimately unsuccessful because we are not able to invade through the soft underbelly. Everybody with me there? The problem is, with Operation Torch, is that it takes about a year and a half, 1942 into 1943. So when we get stonewalled in Europe, the Allies, the British and Americans, they look at each other and they're like, crap, we're 18 months into this war and we have nothing to show for it. So most of the army ends up retreating back here. They come back to Great Britain, tail between their legs, and they're like, we don't know how to win this war. And as they are sitting there, basically cleaning the whiteboard, thinking, we got to come up with a different strategy to win this war, Hitler wins it for us. Because he goes into Russia. Seriously, we're stuck. We're 18 months into this war without any clear progress. And we've kind of come back to Great Britain thinking, crap, the soft underbelly doesn't work. What do we do? And as we're sitting there licking our wounds, Hitler wins the war for us. Because in the winter of 1942 into 1943, his megalomania takes over. And he decides to attack the Soviet Union. And, it's right up there.
In the winter, great idea.
Well, and the thing is, Michael, you're right. But because it's the same mistake as Napoleon. He actually sets his troops from Germany and lets them start marching in the summertime. But by the time they freaking get there, because they're going by foot, right? By the time they get there, the Soviet winter sets in. The Soviet winter obviously sets in a little bit quicker than what it does here in Cincinnati. Right? I mean, so probably by September into October, winter is coming in the Soviet Union. Once again, those crazy freaking Russians, right? All hopped up on cigarettes and vodka, right? That's the only thing they ever need to survive. What do they do to their land, B squared?
They burn it.
They burn it. It's the scorched earth policy once again. They burn it, and they retreat. They burn it, and they retreat. They burn it, and they retreat. And now the Germans, who are not only ill-equipped to be working and fighting within the Soviet Union, now they can't even live off the land. Look how long the supply lines have become. When we get here, okay, and we start talking about the Battle of Stalingrad, which is out here in the Soviet Union, look at how long the supply lines are. So if, young Hans wants to get a new pair of boots or a new uniform or a blanket, the supply lines have been extended. The Russians are not stupid either. By the scorched earth policy, they retreat. And then what they do is they counterattack, and try and cut off the supply lines. So now the Germans are essentially abandoned in the Soviet Union. So by the time they actually get to the Battle of Stalingrad, they're in serious, serious trouble. Really, really ill-equipped to fight this war. Yeah. I think you can refer to the people as Russians. Either one is fine. I know I keep going back and forth on it, but technically it's the Soviet Union. Yeah. I mean, look at the Germans. I mean, they look pretty cold up there. I circled this guy here because not only was he a German soldier at the Battle of Stalingrad, he was also the hunter from Jumanji. You guys see Jumanji?
Yes.
That's it. Same person, though.
Is it a facial hair kind of stuff?
Well put.
What is that?
I thought you meant it was Robin Williams. I was so confused.
Like, wow.
Robin Williams is actually a warlord.
Adolf Hitler goes into the Soviet Union with 600,000 troops. He comes back from the Soviet Union with 300,000 troops.
Did Hitler actually go?
The German army goes into the Soviet Union with 600,000 troops. They come back with 300,000 troops. Everybody thinks that the Battle of Normandy and the D-Day invasion is the turning point of World War II, and I think that's incorrect. I think the Battle of Stalingrad is. I think that's a more effective turning point because D-Day in Normandy cannot happen without the Germans' right leg being cut off as a result of the losses in Stalingrad. We can never knock down the front door of Normandy and fight through the German army without their losses in Stalingrad. If they would have been at full strength, we would have never made it in. But the fact they're at 50 or 60% capacity makes it a lot easier for us to get in. Okay, so quick timeline review. 39, Blitzkrieg into Poland. 40, Battle of Britain. 1941, Battle of Britain. Then the U.S. gets involved at the end of 41 after Pearl Harbor. 1942, 1943, Operation Torch. At the end of that, we have the Battle of Stalingrad and the Germans losing close to 50% of their men. At this point, the British and the American army are still in Great Britain, and they think, okay, now is time for the largest full-scale naval invasion in history. Think about that for a second. And they decide that this invasion is going to take place in the northern region of France called Normandy, upon the beaches of Normandy. Everybody thinks that these beaches were right next to each other. You know, as you were going through your reading, or if you haven't yet, you will this evening, talking about the beaches nicknames, you know, Omaha and Gold and Sword and Utah and Juneau. These were all the nicknames of the beaches. They were actually 10, 20, 30 miles apart, each beach. So when we're talking about the Allied invasion, it wasn't just like on one little beach. I mean, it was about a 100-mile wide region in which the Americans decide, and the British, and the Canadians, and the Australians, and the 7 French, okay, they decide to attack here. It's a pretty wide region. And that takes place on June 6, 1944, another date that you need to know. Commonly referred to as D-Day. Anybody know what D stands for? Dynamite Day, Devastation Day, Decimation Day, Destruction Day, Doomsday. It's never really said. To me, I think the best guess of D-Day is Designated Day. This is the day that we're going to go. It was going to be June 4th. The weather was too bad, so they bumped it to June 5th. It was going to be June 5th. Weather was too bad, so they bumped it to June 6th. So on the very, very early morning of June 6, 1944, the Allies cross the English Channel and invade here at Normandy.
And was Great Britain a part of that too?
Absolutely.
You have to hit present, I think. I'm not sure about.
So here's the beaches that I was talking about right here in Normandy. How many have seen the movie Saving Private Ryan? 2, 3, 4. You need an AP Euro movie night, and you gotta see this movie. All right, I think that it is probably the most historically correct and impactful movie that I can recommend, especially to people your age. Now, it's rated R. It's got terrible language in it. It's got grotesque violence in it. So if you're not 17, you can't watch it. Okay, you certainly need to ask your parents first. Okay, there's the disclaimer. But if you do get a chance to watch it, whether it's this year or in 5 years, it's incredibly moving. It's a really, really good movie. Okay, 3 hours long. If you don't want to do the whole 3 hours, at least do the first 30 minutes. Because the first 30 minutes are a really, really good reenactment of this invasion at D-Day. The first scene are these guys literally coming off the boats. Now you got to think about this, right? Water, beaches, cliffs, Germans. You guys have all been to the beach. You walk on the beach. How many places is there to hide on the beach? You got nothing, right? I mean, you are wide open. So think about the number of soldiers that the Allies would have to commit to the beachfront to actually make enough of an impact in which waves and waves of soldiers would come up on the beaches so that the Germans would not be able to kill all of them. And think about how many soldiers would be killed as a result of it. The first 30 minutes of Saving Private Ryan are unbelievable. Let me give you a little personal story here. I'm your age when Saving Private Ryan comes out. 1998, 1999, something like that. And we had actually, it was right after our sophomore year, and none of us were 17 yet. There was this really, really bad movie theater down in Norwood, right off the Norwood Lateral. I think it's like a church now. But we went there because we knew that they did an ID, so we could go to see Saving Private Ryan. So myself and two friends go on a summer day sometime in June after the movie came out. And the first 30 minutes are so appalling. I mean, the violence and how many people are killed. And I'll just give you warnings now of, limbs being blown off and guys lying there bloodied, and the guy's got his hands intertwined in his intestines and his intestines are on the outside. I mean, it's gross stuff. Around the country, the footage was so real, and the sounds of the bullets and the waves and the death was so real that in 1998, when this movie came out, it was triggering flashbacks for the World War II veterans. Whether they had been involved in Normandy or they had stormed other beaches and fighting the Japanese as part of the island hopping campaign. That World War II veterans, you figured they're 25 in 1945, so they were in their 70s when this was happening. They were going to see the movie. They were triggering flashbacks so bad that throughout all of the theaters, including the one in mine, people were getting up and walking out in the first 30 minutes because they couldn't handle it. Because it was triggering the PTSD that had been dormant for 50 years. That's how real it was. I mean, the first 30 minutes are truly, truly eye-opening. If I could show this movie to you more than any other movie in all of history, I would show this movie to you. But I can't. It's rated R. Board policy, can't do it. So, if you get the chance, between now, and I don't even care about the AP test, between now and the end of the year, have a movie night, Abby will make popcorn, and you can, don't eat it the first 30 minutes, but then you can, you can watch it. It's a really, really powerful movie. Okay? And I think you'll better understand the Normandy invasion because of it. Okay? So, first of all, you talk about large-scale invasion. Oh my goodness gracious, look at that. Look at all those, ships and people, coming aboard, certainly taking up the German prisoners, but we got to get them from the big boats into the little boats, right, and then onto the beach. So these were the ones who would actually go on the beach. And the first scene is you see all of these guys, right, and they're all throwing up because they're so nervous. And then this guy at the front turns a wheel, turns a crank, and the thing comes down, and then all of a sudden the rush of bullets come in. And I mean, the first 10 guys are dead, just like that. I mean, it's really powerful.
Mr. Ham is that movie? Steven Spielberg.
Yes, and Tom Hanks,
Isn't Matt Damon in it as well?
Matt Damon. Yeah. Really, really impactful movie. Okay, so back to our map. The D-Day invasion, even though it was incredibly costly, was successful. The Allies are able to invade through Normandy, and as a result, if you look at the map, after invading through Normandy, they can come in here. Once they have done that, they can come in through here. It's kind of a straight shot to Berlin. The last major battle of World War II in Europe takes place right around Christmas of 1944. That's known as the Battle of the Bulge. They come through Belgium and through the Battle of the Bulge, and by May of 1945, they have attacked Germany, and Germany is ready to surrender. So this is June 1944. This is December 1944, and by May of 45, we're in Berlin. Now think about that. Within 12 months, within 11 months, we win the entire war. We had not invaded Europe by June of 1944, and by May of 1945, Germany's done. They've surrendered. They actually fold a lot quicker than we anticipated. You guys heard of the Manhattan Project? Right, the secret building of the atomic bomb. We built the bomb. We originally built it because we think that we're going to use it on Germany. We thought that they were going to be a lot tougher to defeat than the Japanese. So when Einstein and Oppenheimer, both German Jews who escaped prior to the Holocaust, brought atomic bomb technology with them to America, and then the Americans used it to build the bombs, we actually built it because we thought we were going to have to drop it on Germany because we didn't think that they would surrender.
On Berlin.
Not necessarily on Berlin. It's the same reason we didn't drop the bombs on Tokyo, because we didn't want to kill 1 million people, right? But if we were able to drop the atomic bombs on Germany, we thought they'd surrender. Well, they end up folding a lot quicker, so we take the atomic bombs, we put them in our back pocket, and then we use it on the Japanese later. Okay. Late April of 1945, Hitler knows that he's lost the war. He also knows that he does not want to suffer the same fate as Mussolini. Did you hear what the Italians did to Mussolini? There was a mob in Rome. Once they realized that they were going to lose the war, they all stormed the presidential palace where Mussolini is. Almost like Louis XVI, storming Versailles, all that kind of stuff. They pull Mussolini out of the presidential palace, decapitate him, put his head on a stick, and then march around behind his head on a stick through St. Peter's Square in Rome. Hitler hears about that. Doesn't think, well, if they did that to Mussolini, what are they going to do to me? Goes into his underground bunker. He and his wife, girlfriend, mistress, whatever, Eva Braun, commit suicide. I think she takes poison. He shoots himself. And then prior to their death, he had instructed his top aide to take their bodies and put them in the furnace. So the bodies were never found. Which is why you still hear rumors,
Argentina.
yeah, Hitler is in Argentina and he's still alive and he's on the same island as, Elvis and JFK and Tupac, and they're all hanging out together. But no, Hitler was killed. Okay. The official date of the German surrender, May 8th, 1945, and that commonly is referred to as VE Day, for Victory in Europe.
What was that?
What day?
Sorry.
That's okay. May 8th, 1945. VE Day, Victory in Europe.
What was the, I don't remember what it was. Was that around after the war, after America dropped the atomic bomb and everything like that? There was some sort of campaign that for a presidency election, someone had a campaign as a little girl and she had flowers or something. She's picking a flower and counting down. And then it ended with an atomic bomb being dropped and they could only play it once because it was so upsetting and disturbing. So it was talking about how they weren't justified to drop it. It was right after World War II.
Dang.
I remember we learned about it in homeschool. So
Gotcha. Quick side note, I can't answer that directly, but I'll give you a little bit more background. in April of 1945, before Hitler kills himself, before the end of the war, Franklin Roosevelt, the president now of the U.S. for 12 years, right? President through the Depression, through the New Deal, through World War II. He's just elected to his 4th term in office, and he dies in office. So his vice president, Harry Truman, takes over. Truman becomes the president. Then 3 months later, basically the military advisors go to Harry Truman, and they're like, we need to defeat the Japanese. The Germans have been easy. We have 2 options. Option 1, mainland invasion of Japan. You're looking at between 200 and 250,000 American casualties. Because remember, the Japanese did not surrender. We're going to have to kill every last Japanese grandma on the island, okay? Because they're going to try and kill us. So that's option 1. Or option 2 is the Manhattan Project, that we're actually going to use the atomic bombs on Japan. Now think about that. You've been president for about 4 minutes, right? And you're trying to end this war, and they give you these 2 options. Either way, you have 200,000 casualties on your hands. But are they American casualties? Or are they Japanese casualties? The atomic bomb is probably one of the worst things ever to happen in history, and I still think that Harry Truman makes the right decision. You can't kill your own soldiers. Especially half of those soldiers were the ones in Germany that had just earned their ticket home, invaded D-Day, made it through the Battle of the Bulge, won the war, and rather than sending them home to their families, you're going to put them on a boat, you're going to send them to Japan for a mainland invasion. You might as well kill them now. They're going to die. So they decide to bomb Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Why those 2 cities? Smaller population, so we don't kill 1 million people, and both Hiroshima and Nagasaki were munitions factory cities. So, even though we did it for the civilian casualties, it made it look better because we were taking out their military support network. So, yeah.
Was Japan crumbling because Hitler fell and fascism was dying in Europe, or did they prompt it in any way?
Japan loses the war just because we're better than they are.
Because of the bombs?
No, we, just real quick looking, here at the map, I mean, we kind of hop from island to island to island to island, and slowly but surely, we have better naval support, we have better soldiers, we have better, monetary support, so slowly but surely, through all of these islands, we win at, and we kill all of the Japanese, because they don't surrender. So, our army is continuing to get bigger and bigger and bigger because of the draft. All of these people are dying, so by the time we're starting to really push towards Japan, Japan doesn't have much of an army left.
So we bombed them.
So, Japan, once we make it to Okinawa, which is right here off the coast of Japan, now we can fly over Japan and try and get them to surrender. We actually firebomb Tokyo, not atomic bomb, just regular bombs. And at this point, through diplomatic channels, we said to Emperor Hirohito, hey, you need to surrender. He's like, I'm not surrendering. We have the atomic bomb. We're going to drop it on you. You need to surrender. He says, I don't think you have the atomic bomb, and I'm not surrendering. August 6, 1945, we drop it on Hiroshima. 100,000 casualties. The next day, hey, you need to surrender. I'm not surrendering. We're going to drop another atomic bomb on you. You don't have another atomic bomb. August 9, 1945. We drop it on Nagasaki. Hey, you need to surrender. Okay, we have another atomic bomb. By the way, we didn't. Totally bluffed. We had made 3. We tested 1 in New Mexico. We dropped 2 on the Japanese cities. We were only halfway through making our 4th one. But our bluff was good enough. 5 days later, Hirohito's like, okay, I give.
Wait, we tested.
How do you spell Hirohito?
We tested it in New Mexico. Have you seen that terrible, terrible movie, The Hills Have Eyes?
Yes.
It's about how all those little aliens, but Las Cruces out in New Mexico is where we test the atomic bomb.
How do you spell
Didn't we do it like?
Hirohito?
Did we didn't?
Phonetically. Hirohito.
You wouldn't. I'm pretty. Like drop it. You got a video of the atomic bomb.
August 6th and August 9th.
Yeah.
So 2 days later.
Somebody recorded Japan.
And then he sat on it for 5 days thinking, what am I going to do? And then finally, August 14th is when he surrendered.
That's new kind of stuff. Have you ever watched Hat Dude? Yeah.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Did you know when he gets an award for
Okay.
journalism?
All right, so the Germans have surrendered, the Japanese have surrendered, the official date that you put for the official end of World War II is September 2nd, 1945. And because I'm a history dork, 6 years and 1 day. September 1st to September 2nd. I think that's kind of cool. The Japanese emperor. You have to remember that the Japanese did not want to surrender. It was against their cultural standards. Stories of Japanese soldiers coming home after the war and knocking on the front door of their family home, and the family opening up the door, seeing that their soldier was still there and had not sacrificed his life for his country, his family, his emperor, and shutting the door. Not welcoming the soldiers back into their homes because they had dishonored their family by not basically committing suicide. Crazy. Japanese also took their best pilots and turned them into kamikaze pilots. Now, to me, if you're gonna fly into a ship, I'm gonna take the one who's the worst pilot, right? Hey, you can't fly, you can't bomb anything, but you think you could hit that enormous boat? You think you're good enough to do that? So by halfway through the war, the Japanese Air Force is out of pilots because they're all dead.
I found what I was talking about. It was the girl with the daisy and the atomic bomb explosion in 1964, so it was a lot later, but it was Lyndon B. Johnson's campaign ad, and they only could run it one time because it caused, I don't know, it like caused so much upset.
Interesting.
But it's supposed to be like there have been like unelectable leaders, and I don't know.
Interesting.
Only thing I remember from school.
Glad you did it. Any other questions on the war? Kale?
Was Germany trying to be atomic bomb too?
Yes.
So how close were they?
They were fairly close at the beginning, but Einstein and Oppenheimer were originally Germans. They had started, messing around with it in the early 30s, but then luckily Einstein and Oppenheimer got out before the Holocaust went, full blown, and so they brought the nuclear technology with them. Ironically, the Manhattan Project, most of the formulation of the atomic bomb was done at the University of Chicago in underground labs. Good thing nothing blew up underneath the second biggest city in the United States. To me, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it in the middle of Iowa, not underneath Chicago, but it worked out.
Iowa is a great place, like corn and goats.
Perfect.
I know, me and Andrew are both from Iowa.
You're right, I just did.
The middle of Iowa is Des Moines, so you'd have blown up a big city. A big
Middle of
city?
Iowa is Des Moines, and the 17 people who live there.
There's like a million. A billion.
The reason why the Germans lost World War I is because they were fighting a two-front war. How were we able to manage a two-front war better?
That is an entire conversation that you're going to have next year with Mrs. Leatherwood. The 60-second answer is the Americans were unbelievably effective at propaganda. And so and this was a little bit yesterday too, of 100% commitment by the American people on the home front. Every man, woman, and child was involved in the war effort. We're rationing, we're doing blackouts, meatless Mondays, gasless Tuesdays, fighting in the war, Rosie the Riveter, all that. Everybody was involved in the war effort. And so by the Americans being involved in buying war bonds and supporting the war and drafting into the war, we were able to do it. Still by about that much. Okay? It is the most impressive undertaking that the Americans have ever done. You think about that generation for a second. My grandparents' generation. Now, obviously, I'm biased. You know how much I love my grandfather. But, this man grows up during the Depression, fights during World War II, defeats the Nazis, defeats the Japanese, comes back, baby boom generation, the U.S. economy gets going, 1950s, rock and roll, automobiles, the highway system. This generation, they nicknamed it the greatest generation. They built America. They're the reason that America is so great. And the problem is that they are almost gone, which is terrible. And most of them are into their 90s or are gone now. But really, really important to remember that. Yeah.
So then why has American propaganda techniques fallen?
Television. within World War II, no bad news was shown because everything was so heavily censored because there was no TV. They could censor it through the radio or through the propaganda films that you would see as the previews of the movies. Then Vietnam comes, TV had been invented in that time, and now I got a camera directly into the battlefield. So I can see young Jimmy get shot on the battlefield. If they saw that during World War II, the population would have split and we wouldn't have been able to do it. That's why Vietnam and frankly the rest of the wars have been so unsuccessful, because it's polarizing because of media.
Okay.
Good question. All right, for the last couple minutes, I want to talk about wartime conferences. The first wartime conference takes place in Casablanca. Do you know where Casablanca is?
The White
Which is the White House. Very good. Muy
Exactly.
bien. Okay. Casablanca is a city in Morocco. Do you guys know where Morocco is?
Yes.
Somewhere in Africa. Very good. Casablanca is,
It's on like the northeastern tip of Africa.
yeah, it's like right there. Okay. So Casablanca is right there. Now, if we have a conference in Casablanca, what do you think that Stalin, Churchill, and FDR are sitting down to figure out? Good. So the first wartime conference, Casablanca, is the planning of Operation Torch and the invasion through North Africa.
Did they really invade North Africa, or just like they kind of used it to invade Italy?
Both, because the Germans were down there, but then part of that was actually French territory too, so it was
Okay.
sometimes easier to go in. The second one is the conference at Tehran. Do you guys know where Tehran is?
Wrong.
Where would it sound like it would be at? The Middle East, good. Specifically? Close?
Open the line. Greek. Greek.
This is when Iran actually liked us, okay? And Iran was a British protectorate at this point. Now, Casablanca is in 1942. Tehran is 1943. What needs to be planned in 1943?
G-Day, and can I ask a question real quick?
This is D-Day. So at Tehran, they planned the D-Day invasion, the Normandy invasion. Go ahead, Mike.
So with American the rise of the basically how America unifies behind the war effort, and women and minorities gain basically more social power due to the fact that they are allowed to work jobs that were previously restricted to white men. Do you think we would be in a similar social position now, or not?
Yes, because the quick answer to that is, with it for as effective as they were and how many rights they gained during World War II, when all the men come back, the women take a huge step backwards. They're like, thank you so much for your wartime effort. I need you to go and get behind the kitchen sink and start cleaning for your husband and start making babies again. It's pretty step back. Okay. The third conference, February of 1945, and a conference at Yalta. Please put a star next to this one. You'll probably get asked about this one the most. February 1945. The war is almost over. So what are Churchill, FDR, and Stalin? This is probably the most famous photograph of the three of them. All right. What would the three of them be discussing here, Prancer?
Wasn't it about what the Soviet Union would get from the German invasion?
Perfect. So when Germany loses, and they know that Germany's going to lose, what do we do with Germany? So Yalta discusses what we call the division of Germany.
Between the Soviet Union, England, and America.
Yeah, and we decide to give the French a little bit too. Okay. And then there's my lovely picture because I'm teaching the Cold War to my juniors right now. But that's essentially what they end up doing to Germany. They take Germany and they split it in half. It becomes West Germany and East Germany.
And is that why the Berlin Wall gets
And that's a byproduct of that is that Berlin, even though it's located entirely within East Germany, because it's the capital city, the Americans are like, well, hey, we deserve part of the capital city. So West Berlin kind of becomes this oasis of democracy within communist-controlled East Germany. So to split West Berlin and East Berlin, they built the Berlin Wall. We'll talk about that next week. Okay. So Yalta, 1945. That is Churchill, FDR, and Stalin, and that talks about the division of Germany following the conclusion of the war.
This summer, I'm really bad at raising my hand today. This summer, when we were in Berlin, we did like a tour or whatever, and the guy had his little pass when he was younger about like going on either side, like showing like which side he like belonged to and
Yeah.
what party was.
Checkpoint Charlie and all of that.
Yeah.
Coach Joe almost got shot at Checkpoint Charlie. Did he ever tell you that
Was he
story?
there when it was up?
He was in the mid-'80s when Coach Joe was a senior at Turpin. His dad got a promotion for P&G, and they had to move to Belgium. And so Joe spent his senior year in Belgium, and the whole family moved over there. And one weekend, they went to Berlin. Now, the Cold War's still going on. It's cooled off, right? But the Cold War's still going on in the mid-'80s. And Joe was the oldest, and his little brother, they were in Berlin, and his little brother kind of like ran away because he was 8 or whatever, and ran into Checkpoint Charlie. And Joe had to run after him and get him. And as he grabbed his little brother, he looked up, and there were German soldiers, right? I mean, pointing at him because that was the one passageway from East Berlin into West Berlin. So, crazy. The fourth one, the final conference, takes place at Potsdam in the summer of 1945. Potsdam. Potsdam.
What countries?
I think Potsdam is somewhere in Eastern Europe, I think.
Eastern Germany.
Within Potsdam, okay, this is Truman, because FDR is dead. And President Truman, you imagine doing this, you've, again, been president for 4 minutes. You sit down at Potsdam, you look at Churchill and Stalin, and you're like, guess what? I have the atomic bomb, and I'm going to use it. At Potsdam, Truman reveals to the Allies that he is the atomic bomb, and he's going to use it on the Japanese. Quick little conspiracy theory, because I love them. Some people say that the Americans didn't need to use it on Japan, and the only reason we used it on Japan was because we knew following the war that we were going to enter into the Cold War and into the staring contest with the Soviet Union, and that we used it on Japan to show off to the Soviet Union, being like, hey, after the war, don't screw with us. If we'll drop it on Japan, we'll drop it on you too. So I'm sure that there was some pretty good tension between Truman and Stalin when Truman looks at Stalin and says, I have the atomic bomb and I'm going to use it. That'll make more sense next week when we talk more about the Cold War. But those are the 4 wartime conferences you need to know. Casablanca, Tehran, Yalta, and Potsdam.
Is the movie Casablanca about this one?
What's that?
Is the movie about?
No, but it takes place during World War II.
Why was he talking about the original?